Fractal is fresh. You pretty much have the same user experience from zero to hero in a weekend. Fractal is the coolest thing I've ever seen on Bitcoin.
I really like your analogy of like how, Singapore being a small country is almost like the Bitcoin block. Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Fractal podcast. The reason why, we decided to start doing a series like this is because we thought it would be great to highlight, the awesome builders in the Fractal ecosystem. And let's see what we can do. Since it's the first, I hope this will be the first of many. And I hope you look forward to more going forward. I'm Spencer, one of the core contributors at Fractal. I've been in crypto for the last 7 years, still having a lot of fun. And these days, I really, really enjoy building in Bitcoin. I'm really pleased to have with me today, Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui is the founder of sCrypt. They have been building in the space for a very long time. I've been following along your work for a while as well. So it's really awesome to see you here today. And you are one of the builders in the Fractal ecosystem. You've been putting up content, you've been putting up ideas. So I really want to talk a little bit about what builders can expect and how can builders be more engaged and build on Bitcoin and Fractal. So without further ado, Xiao Hui, let's get this conversation started. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up here?
First of all, really great honor to be the first guest of this inaugural talk, and I hope maybe one day we can return and then check back to see what has happened. But I've been in this let's say general Bitcoin space since forever, since 2017. So I was working at Facebook as a research scientist. I was doing all kind of research in terms of peer-to-peer networking, high throughput protocol designs as such. So that's when I think I kind of got caught in the crypto world because, after work, you always want to explore what's out there to see what are the cool kids are cooking those days. Some friends of mine, they were doing some mining. So we were mining some kind, today's work on some kind of like a shitcoin in my garage. And it was just very fascinating to me because I like that kind of person who, if I, look at something that's amazing, I want to understand how it works. For example, this mining thing is a very unique experience. I don't know any other field that kind of like a Federal Reserve, you are kind of like a printing money. I don't know any other technology can enable you to do that. And for people who have been into crypto long enough, you may have heard about this project called Steam. And that's and also they have a front end called Steemit. Basically, it's like a medium.com. If your post goes viral, there's a lot of people like your content, you can actually earn this cryptocurrency called Steam. So and looks like nobody's paying. Somehow, it's just very interesting to me, and I want to understand, it's almost like a combination of technology and also let's say finance or monetary theory, which I almost have no idea with. So that's why it looks to me it's like a rabbit hole. So I kind of dive into that. And then I noticed, not only people can, let's say, have some kind of like a cryptocurrency or coins, you can also build stuff from it. I'm like always like a builder myself. I tinker with different things in my spare time. So that's why I started deploying, let's say smart contract or tokens. Of course, everybody started with Ethereum world. And then back in 2017, and that's also like, very trendy word called Ethereum killer. It's a blockchain 3.0, because we all know Bitcoin's supposed to be 1.0 and then Ethereum 2.0, and then there's a bunch of killers coming. So I think at that time I really hyped about the EOS. And I think that's the only ICO I ever participated in because super long and almost like everybody can get in. And I even, pretty much it's quit my job to work on EOS because at that time I thought, hey, this is something that's is very ready. I think in a couple of months it's going to launch mainnet, and it's supposed to be where the whole blockchain space is in the future. So I try to, build a bunch of things there. I'm a developer, and a lot of time I frequently use, QA website like Quora or Stack Overflow. So at that time, I want to move the Steam idea to say, hey, if you answer questions, you should the one who's getting all the profits, or at least capture most of the value instead of the so-called centralized companies like Quora or Stack Overflow. So I built that on EOS. But that has a wherever you actually want to build something like and try to make it user-friendly, you always have all kinds of different issues. You have to rent, I think, CPU, memory. It's crazy, it's like you want just build a game, or then you have to understand all the different economics has 5 moving parts. All of them have to align. Otherwise, before you even start your programming your app, everything else is already broken. You have been rug pulled already before you even get started. So that's why I kind of like take a pause there, say, hey, is this is the mainstream like in the crypto space, but is this the right approach? Maybe I should take a step back and going from the first principle, really derive where this come from. I think that's why I dive into the so-called blockchain 1.0 that back then, Bitcoin, because at the same time there's another huge debate going called scaling debate 2017. So I just want to see, hey, if we're already in blockchain 3.0, why is all this like almost like a boomers that are still stuck in the the blockchain 1.0 and they're still debating some weird stuff? Where does this come from? It's like we already have iPhone, and then somebody's debating between whether you should add a camera in Nokia or not. It's just very strange, and somehow this coin still has the biggest market cap for whatever reason. So whenever something doesn't click, I just want to understand. I don't know where this is going, and I don't know if it's useful. If it's just to me, I think I always follow my curiosity. I'm just curious, so I just spend a lot of time. I don't know even why I spend those time. Just researching, hey, what did the creator say about Bitcoin? What you can use it for? And then after I met down, I think almost for 2 or 3 months, I just did nothing other than just study Bitcoin. I think at the end of the research, this is my conclusion: either Bitcoin as a protocol succeeds, or this whole thing doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I immediately switched to Bitcoin. At that time, Bitcoin Cash is more like, let's say, developer friendly, because BTC, you're just only supposed to hodl it. So I started developing immediately into Bitcoin Cash at that time. Yeah. But then later on, we have different forks and then different variants. So when I say Bitcoin, I mean the general Bitcoin protocol, meaning you take proof of work, Bitcoin script. So I've been in the, let's say, general Bitcoin space since 2017, and I've not touched any other chain since then, because I think this is the most economically and also technologically superior chain. I think a lot of people probably don't agree with that, but that's okay.
That's amazing, right? I think what you mentioned earlier was really interesting in the sense that you're just very curious, intellectually curious, very first principles thinking on a lot of these things, right? Why should things exist? What's unique about certain things? So in that sense, what is Bitcoin to you these days?
The way I think about Bitcoin is the next so-called computing platform. So back in the old days, we have PC, and then we have internet, which connects them together, and then later on we have mobile, right? And then later on we have cloud computing, right? It's all different. This computing technology is, they come into different, let's say, almost like generations. And the Bitcoin way, or so-called blockchain, is, to me, is the best described as the next computing technology. It's not owned by certain, let's say, centralized companies or parties, and it's very open, and a lot of time it almost needs no permission. And this is very unique and very different from all the previous ones. And we see a lot of people, regardless where they are or how many resources they have or what degree they have, I think if you have very good idea, if you can really outcompete just based on the merit of idea, I think that's very appealing. That's number one, the computing side of things. The second one is, again, economic side, because nowadays, especially even in so-called first world countries, since COVID, a lot of people have this, a lot of time for the first time in their lifetime, they experience this so-called, used to be some theoretical economic concept called inflation, right? Because a lot of people get into the Bitcoin, they probably want to read about the history of money, where the money come from. what is the precious metal base, or even tobacco, right? Back in the good old days, if you go to Harvard in the 17th century, you can pay with tobacco or gunpowder. Okay, as money. It's really money. So you want to understand where money come from, and then you want to know, when did the government It's not always the type, because nowadays people taking granted that the money is always the supply is always controlled by the government, but it's not always the case, right? For example, in the Wild West, it's not even in the U.S. when they explore the West. There's no government. A lot of times the front, the explorer they arrive, they just establish everything, schools, roads, without it. The government is not there, but they still can conduct commerce. So a lot of times I think it's really want to see, hey, if there's something, I wouldn't say, let's say, eliminate government printing money, but at least there's almost like a ruler. You can absolutely measure. If they, print a lot of money, you really want to see, hey, against some kind of almost like objective, measurement, so you can see how bad the scenario is. Because if everybody is printing, so it's just hopefully that can give some constraints on, or maybe even educate the public there's some cost about, just inflating money like almost infinitely. I think the third one, which is also core to my personal belief, these days we all experience, let's say some downside of so-called big tech, right? We always talk about, Facebook sensors or Twitters. If there's some technology that can enable people to maintain or retain the digital so-called sovereignty. I think I've heard too many stories, people spend, years, sometimes 10 years building some audience, and just overnight, because of some violation of some called community guidelines, which is never specified and it's always evolving. I think there's also some way, which I hope people can find ways to build so-called some kind of like a decentralized social network, because as more and more people, especially going into the future, move into the digital, you really want to decentralize way, if I do use a way, people can really own the digital identity instead of they're at the whims of some big tech companies. I think three aspects, each one is gigantic. Blockchain, let's say, or Bitcoin, it has this potential to solve all of them at the same time. I think I wouldn't work on any other industry, that has this kind of impact.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
I would say like one of the things that really strike out to me is also like how varied your experience has been, because you were at a big tech company, right? And then moving from moving from that into self-sovereignty, decentralization, and so on. That move, I'm sure, was like very, very large for you. But I think it really makes sense to me as well. I think for me personally, when I first got into the Bitcoin industry, the crypto industry, I think a lot of those ideas that you mentioned about how broken some parts of the world are, inflation and so on, I think these are the problems that really, maybe we got into the industry for different reasons, right? For something that was cool, like in your case, it was like decentralized social networking and some of these other things. But then I think what made us stay, I guess, is a lot of these other ideologies that you find yourself very, very personally aligned with. So I find that to be very, very awesome.
Just a side note, I think a lot of people, especially in crypto, is very tribal, tribalistic, and I find a lot of times it's kind of weird, because so-called enemy probably share 99% of your same belief as you, but it's just because you regard, maybe think that's not pure because of the last remaining 1%. I really want to, let's say a lot of times we have more in common than what people would have us to believe. We're almost like enemies. In a lot of sense, we are aligned. We just have different methods how to get let's say how to limit government spending. I think we have a lot of goals in common, but it's just people have different ways, approaches how to achieve those. I think hopefully some people, they can be more tolerant to different ideas, especially in crypto.
I think in general, like in the world as well, right? Like I think these days we have a lot of like the extreme left and right, and a lot of these other kind of like political or non-political ideology differences between people. And to a point, it's really like the ones that are similar to you, but yet different on one particular issue that really irks and creates a lot of like rift between these different communities, right? I think in some ways, I think the beauty of crypto and blockchain as well is that, you are able to use these systems to coordinate and do things without the need of trust, right? So in some sense, we also need trust, but in some sense, we also don't need trust, right? So it's like an interesting balance.
Some way you can use technology to reduce the trust assumptions. I think in general, that's a good approach. Basically, you are reducing the cost of doing business because why do we have contracts and, court legal system? A lot of times just because the parties, they do not necessarily believe each other, especially they're thousands of miles away and they have never done business together, and then they're in very different jurisdiction. I think with this technology, especially so-called smart contract, I think that the core idea is you want to have some kind of using technology, for example, cryptography, to reduce the trust assumption, so you can enable more commerce to happen. And I think in this space, pretty much everybody agrees. More commerce means better future for the society, right?
Totally agree. I remember, the Bitcoin white paper. It was like peer-to-peer electronic cash payment, right, and so on. It's one of those things where, like, I think Bitcoin has accomplished that today with what it is. People are able to send transfer value across without the need for trust. You can see that through the UTXOs and so on. And of course, recently, I think if we have been paying attention to the debates and the issues and the conversations in the Bitcoin ecosystems, there's this topic of OP-CAT, right? I'm love to hear from you. How would you explain OP-CAT? Because on paper, to me, it's like hey, it's concatenation, right? Maybe to many people who are watching this episode or reading about it for the first time, they'll be wondering, what makes it unique? How does it, for example, enable some of the things that you mentioned earlier, like maybe more smart contract capabilities and so on, or other interesting applications that can be built, right? Beyond what we already have seen on Bitcoin.
The OP-CAT, we need to go back a little bit back, let's say to 2009, a little bit of history. So in 2009, this so-called pseudonymous author called, Satoshi Nakamoto, he just released some white paper in some like very, let's say, obscure, or even, some people say the very niche, mailing list, cryptography mailing list. He got Bitcoin, this peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And then when he released it, he not only put the paper out, he also have a reference implementation, which we call the Bitcoin node software. So in this first version, when you first release, a lot of people, even if they have been in Bitcoin for, I don't know, even more than 10 years, a lot of people, they don't know is there is a so-called virtual machine inside. Since the first version, it has, for each virtual machine, it has some set of instructions, right? For example, you can add two numbers, you can do some kind of logical operations, and of course, you can also concatenate two things, as what you just mentioned, OP-CAT, right? And later on, for various reasons, I think a lot of times has to do with security concerns. So he disabled some of the opcodes. Let's say out of the 100 opcodes, which is the instruction set for this so-called virtual machine, Bitcoin, he disabled, let's say, 10 of them, okay, for various reasons. I think it was temporarily because back then some bug happened, and also some potential attacks can happen. So out of caution, he just disabled some of them. The idea is to, hey, later on when we did some final, let's say, thorough research or investigation, if we find these are okay and we have different ways to reduce the risk, maybe we can bring it back sometime. And even though let's say we have about 10 opcodes disabled, for example, OP-CAT, and another one very useful and should be very useful, op-mal. You can multiply two things, right? This seems very basic, but the surprising fact is we done quite a bit of research into this. So it turns out if you only enable this so-called OP-CAT, you can almost do anything, any kind of a arbitrarily complex smart contract as you can, that can run on any other blockchain. In computer science jargon, it's called Turing complete. Okay, so right now it's Turing incomplete, Bitcoin smart contract, because of the disabled opcode. But if you just want turn one opcode on, OP-CAT, you can turn it fully programmable, which means it's Turing complete. You cannot do this with any other opcode. That's it. You can do mal. I don't think you can turn into that much programmable with just if you only have, let's say, opmal. This opcat is really, it looks very underwhelming, very insignificant, but it's actually super powerful because it's acts as a very fundamental building block that you can almost build infinite, structure out of it.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Thanks for
Yeah.
demystifying that for us. It's definitely one of those things where sometimes it's just one of these little things,
Yeah.
especially in this particular case, right? So I think your company as sCrypt has built actually around this OPCAD opcode for a little bit with some your work and so on. Could you maybe describe a little bit about what you have built? What others have built on your platform as well, and what do you hope to see as well?
Jumping from so-called Ethereum to EOS and then back to Bitcoin, what we notice is, hey, even though I understand Bitcoin is very scalable and programmable, but then it's very, very difficult to work with, to develop any kind of apps on Bitcoin. I mean, that was like 2017. I think it still holds to a large extent, very true even today. You try to build anything on Bitcoin today is still, I think, very cumbersome. So that's what we want to come in to help other builders to be able to build things on top of our tools or SDKs, APIs. So the idea is they don't have to understand a lot about the underlying technology. They don't have to run the node or run their own indexers and sync it up and maintain. And if it crashes, restart. All this is almost like think about the cloud computing technology, right? So let's say you want to build some kind of Uber or Instagram or even TikTok. A lot of times you don't want to spend most of the time, building data centers, maintain, get the cables wired up. All those are like an infrastructure every app needs. So we want to help abstract all of those. So you don't have to, you can focus on your applications without worrying about all the underlying, let's say, infrastructure tooling. So specifically, we built, let's say, sCrypt high-level language. So we talk about the Bitcoin, opcode, even though it's very powerful, but it's very low level. It's like assembly language. So we would build some kind of a high-level language called sCrypt. It's a, we can talk a little bit more, but it's a TypeScript library. So it's like almost like a JavaScript. It is literally like JavaScript. So any kind of developers, even so-called Web 2 developers, they can come here, and they just very quickly they can pick it up, and then they can start building. A lot of interesting ideas in the past many years that people have been building with us. For example, some people build some kind of like a so-called hodler locker. So it's almost like Twitter, but instead of likes or retweet, you need to lock up your Bitcoin. The more, so that at least helps, to, let's say, you have some skin in the game when you really just want to promote or curate some content, right? Instead of having, let's say, 1,000, bots or whatever, that's, go make some so-called superficial, post goes viral out of nowhere. You really have some kind of, let's say, skin in the game and some cost related to it. So hopefully the content curated that way can be more, let's say, of high quality. Or some people even build, let's say, zero knowledge based, games, because zero knowledge for, just, we don't have to get into detail, but for this talk, you can just regard it as the most complicated smart contract running on any other blockchain, Ethereum, Solana, any other blockchains. We have actually implemented zero knowledge proof that runs. I think we are the first to implement this running on the Bitcoin protocol. And people have been using this building all kinds of games, or privacy games, or even scalability solutions like ZK rollup. I think that's something also super cool. Yeah, we do a lot of, I would say, groundbreaking work on Bitcoin. I think that's why a lot of people have heard about us through either zero knowledge or machine learning. All these kind of things that you think even is very difficult to do on other blockchains. It's actually, we have done it on the real, using the Bitcoin blockchain.
Some of the things that you mentioned, like games and stuff, like, I think when a lot of people think about Bitcoin, crypto, I think it's actually one of those like main use cases, right? People, I think back in the day, in Bitcoin, it's like BTC games and so on. I think people also build like random stuff as well. And these days, I think you see like a lot more like interesting titles, like more high quality content as well, I think in other ecosystems. And I think in Bitcoin itself, maybe a little bit less so, but I really want to see then what are some of the other ideas that could be unlocked over here. So very excited in general. I think at the end of the day, like, even when I think about, the Fractal and the Fractal ecosystem, I think one of the things that we do think about is how do we make sure that we encourage more innovation? How do we encourage more fun? So any of these things, I think as you mentioned, whether it's like tooling, whether it's like, locking up for social reasons and so on, like these interesting like incentive mechanisms that can be unlocked are all like super fascinating. So yeah, to that point then, let's hear, why are you building on Fractal? I know you announced actually sCrypt support for Fractal sometime back now. So yeah, what is it about Fractal that made you pay attention, like start looking into it and start, building on it?
It first came into let's say my horizon later, I think end of the last year. I was, because back then, everybody has their own layer 2s. I don't know anybody who don't have their own layer 2s, but it's very popular. But I always feel like it's kind of weird because now you are coming back to so-called mother chain, Bitcoin. But I think all of them back then is through some kind of like a bridge mechanism to so-called layer 2, and then it just have some kind of like a EVM on top of it. That's mostly what I've seen, because I'm always interested in the Bitcoin the protocol. And to me, other protocols is maybe they can, they have some short-term advantages. But to me, I want to work on something long-term that can really, bring this interest to the so-called, average Joe, to the mainstream audience. So I always want to something long-term, viable. And to me, that's only Bitcoin. And then even you want to scale it, or add privacy or even scalability through layer 2, I want to see that layer 2 is still based on the same protocol. And Fractal is very just fresh to me, because out of all of those, I think this is the only one I can see. It's almost the same with the Bitcoin core protocol. So I think that's what caught my attention. And then later on, I found out it's still using, you pretty much have the same user experience, even the wallet, the block explorer, proof of work, and even, let's say you even do merge mining. I think it's in that sense, it really fits well with the so-called, the layer 2s that actually want to, help or grow together with the Bitcoin main chain. I think that's what makes it stand out. And that's also what makes us to, want to, hey, maybe there's something, here, even though you cannot do it on Bitcoin today, the mainnet, because of the limitations. For example, Opcat. Hey, this is something new playground you can actually play here, and if we all make the right moves, one day we can also bring into back to the Bitcoin chain. Yeah. So I think it is a very simple value proposition, which makes sense to me, and none of the other makes sense to me. So to me it's a no-brainer. It's not very complicated to me. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not a paid endorsement here. I really appreciate you kind of like sharing your perspective as a builder, right? Because I'm sure there are many other builders out there who's also like evaluating where they're building on and so on. And I know some people have been like, talking about like how easier it is to implement on Ethereum and so on if you want to build like a automated market maker or like a lending protocol, right? So could you maybe describe, like, if I'm a builder and I'm like, interested in Fractal, I'm interested in sCrypt, and I want to build, let's say, something that is like a automated market maker or anything, right? A DeFi kind of application. How do you think I should get started? What is that kind of process? What do I need to have? Do I need to be a JavaScript developer? What do I need to have to do it?
I would say do it in 2 steps. The first one is to understand the basic about the Bitcoin itself, meaning what is a big block, what is a block, what is the structure of a block, and what is a transaction, and what consists of a transaction. You have inputs, output, what's inside each input. So you have this, let's say, a structural overview. And once you have that, next step always, okay, this is a promotion. Go to our website, sCrypt.io. We have documentations. We have tutorials that walk you through from, let's say, from 0 to hero. You can do it in a weekend. Just grab some code and walk through the tutorials, and you can build, let's say, of course, primitive to-do list or tic-tac-toe, hook up with some wallet, let's say Unisat on some front end, like, I don't know, React or whatever your favorite front end is. You can build some kind of very basic, Bitcoin app I think in a matter of days. So of course we still have a way to go to catch up with other blockchains, but it's, since 2017 or 18, it has been a long journey, and I think we have made very significant progress in terms of how to make building on Bitcoin easier and faster than ever. I think of course the innovation pace is only accelerating from our perspective, because as more people use our tools, we make it better. So they can also use that experience to help future builders to onboard them even faster. So I would say the momentum is picking up, and I think from my perspective, it's only accelerating from now.
I think by next year at this time, if you were to redo an episode, and if you were to crystal ball gaze out to that 1 year, what do you think are some of the tooling or some of the things that you think the community would have built on Fractal and maybe on sCrypt?
Yeah, let me take out my crystal ball first.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah. First wave, I would expect people do, it's like, it reminds me of the old days, when we first have the mobile phones came out, let's say iPhone or even some kind of like a Windows-based phones. You have to use some kind of like a pen to write it. It's very awkward. And the first time we've seen this mobile apps, it always try to copy whatever this desktop version is. So I would imagine it's like, hey, whatever you have, put it in the blockchain. For example, you have Quora, put it in the blockchain. You have Uber. Remember all the data? Oh, you have to go to Uber, but it's on the blockchain. Okay, so we'll probably see a lot of things like of this, let's say, trend. For example, you may see some like so-called DeFi apps on Ethereum, and now because we have this platform called Fractal, it has Opcat, so it literally enables you to build all kinds of so-called DeFi applications. So people are going to, if I have to guess, people are going to migrate or port this existing apps, let's say Uniswap, or lending, or staking, or games, back to Bitcoin. Okay, so that's probably the first wave we could imagine. And the second wave, I think, which is more exciting, is to build, let's say, more Bitcoin native apps, which takes advantage of the features of Bitcoin, such as Bitcoin script, scalability, UTXO model, or even privacy implications, and hopefully cheaper costs if we can have more scalable layer 2s or sidechain, whatever we call it, Fractal. So I think that there's going to be more surprises coming if we, after the first wave. I think the second wave is probably more promising and intriguing.
Yeah, I think intellectually speaking, just because you're also like someone who's very curious, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're also very curious about what can builders kind of dream up, right?
Yeah.
One of the debates, I think, and people have been talking about, and of course there's some implementations already implemented by teams, is around bridges, right? Bridge is, I think, is a very, very important category in our industry, just because it enables the transfer of assets across various like platforms, layers, and side chains or chains or whatsoever, right? In your mind, like, how would you think about the bridge implementations that you'd like to see on Fractal or maybe on Bitcoin?
For different blockchains or so-called different layers, almost think about them as like different islands separated by vast oceans. Okay, and then because if you want to travel to visit other islands, you pretty much have to cross some kind of bridge. And that's how in my mental map, that's how it lays out today. And the problem is a lot of bridges very, like, let's say, sketchy, or even they're barely above the water and it's all infested with sharks. It's just dangerous territory. For example, BTC is like, hey, it's like a little bit old school, but there's a lot of people, a lot of users, and it's the biggest island. But if you want to play on some cool islands, for example, that's like, I don't know, Disneyland over there, and you want to go play there, but you almost have to, force yourself to cross this dangerous bridge, which is really makes let's say the whole experience very, less appealing to, let's say, especially to so-called normal users. They just want something smooth, as quick as so-called Web 2. They don't have to think about the paying transaction fees, anything, or risk of people rocking them. And unfortunately, or even fortunately, depends on how you look at it, right now, pretty much all the bridges, they need some kind of like additional, let's say, trust assumptions. That's a little bit more than the so-called the trustless Bitcoin base layer. And with the introduction, I think differently, people are there doing different, let's say, projects trying to improve the security. For example, BitVM, or you have many, MPC based, or threshold signature. I think that is becoming better and better than, let's say, a simple multi-sig, but still it's not fully trustless. You can say a lot of them is trust minimized. I really want to see. I think we have done some research into this. Once you have OpCat, because then you can verify, transactions and also Merkle proofs, and I think we can build something like a trustless bridge, which is almost like holy grail of bridging, right? And if that happens, I think the fractal vision will be more, let's say, make more sense, because if you have different instances, then the number one question is how do you make sure they are crossed seamlessly and trustlessly? So I think it's almost funny because almost every road somehow leads back to OpCat. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about too many OpCats these days. It's, regardless of where you look, a lot of times it's just OpCats can make your life so much easier. Yeah, and that's why. That's another big reason why we are on Fractal, because it's the only layer 2 we know of that has this OpCat, and re-enabled, and which means we don't have to wait for, I don't know, who knows how many months or even sometimes years that the mainnet is going to reintroduce this opcode. And we can just simply cannot afford to wait, because we are fast moved and we are just a little, very resource constrained startup. We want to, just experiment with something today, not 18 months or 18 years from now.
I definitely heard many people in the community talk about Fractal as almost like an innovation sort of playground and so on Bitcoin. And I think that's really cool to hear that. And I think in some ways, I think one of the things you mentioned earlier was just OpCat makes life so much easier for developers, make it easier for people. I think that's pretty cool. And of course, recently we saw CAT protocol launch.
Yeah.
So what do you think about CAT protocol? I'm curious what people in the community like yourself, very, very serious builders, think about this. And do you think, what are some of the pros and cons and trade-offs versus like other kind of standards, right? Like BRC20s, runes, and we've seen some others as well. Yeah, I'm really curious, on your take.
7 years in full time into Bitcoin, I think CAT protocol undoubtedly, in my mind, is the coolest thing I've ever seen on Bitcoin. Okay, layer 1 minor value tokens. Here's the thing. If you go to my GitHub repo, I put some kind of like a, let's say, awesome devs resources when I first get into Bitcoin. Back then I was mostly focused on Bitcoin Cash, and on that resource list I list, various proposals, token protocols back then, 2017. Okay, it's very similar of what's happening today. Have multiple tokens on Bitcoin Cash and also multiple so-called smart contract solutions. So I've been researching this problem since forever, 7 years. Okay, so I've seen these different evolutions. Back then from the color coins on BCH, op group, different proposals on there, and then to let's say bunch of protocols on some other Bitcoin forks, and then to early last year with ordinals, and then all the meta protocols, BRC20, and then runes. I think it's really, you can feel it's almost like an evolution. And then we have finally reached the almost, I wouldn't say the final stage, but it's very close to a very elegant solution, which means you can do this with Bitcoin only, meaning all the data, all the code is on Bitcoin. You don't require anything else. You just only need Bitcoin for this token protocol to work, which is very exciting. I think it's just very elegant. I think, and of course they use sCrypt, which is a big bonus, and to see almost like our years of work in this field being validated, This is something, before cat protocol release, people always, I think, theorize about opcat or talk about it on podcasts like this, or Spaces or some YouTubes. But this is really the first time people actually can experience firsthand. It's not something theoretical. It's something you can connect a wallet. You can mint something. You can send it to your buddy. It really help them to, let's say, materialize what the opcat is. It's not only some concept up in the cloud. It's actually down on the ground. People can actually experience today, and immediately they can see a different advantage. For example, you cannot accidentally burn it, right? A lot of time, dealing with this so-called indexer-based token protocols, legacy, I would call it legacy token protocols. A lot of time, users, if they're not careful, or the wallets, they're not careful, they're going to accidentally burn them because they don't know, because Bitcoin doesn't know about indexer logic, but they know about cat logic, because everything cat runs is actually validated by the Bitcoin miners in script, okay? So they cannot accidentally burn it. And then if you have some kind of open mint, if all the tokens are already minted out, if it's like in legacy token protocol, you can still broadcast transactions and pay the fees, but you got nothing in return. So you feel like the user experience is just awful. Okay, versus cat protocols, you can immediately notice either you got the tokens and you pay, or you don't. If you don't get it, you are guaranteed you are not going to waste your precious FB, Bitcoin in this sense. So it just turns the whole discussion from something very, let's say, esoteric or conceptual to something, very concrete and tangible. I think that hopefully would help guide people, to make the decision about, hey, whether or when we should have the opcat reintroduced on the Bitcoin mainnet. I think that's also validates the valid proposition for Fractal, because that's what enables the Fractal to almost to be like a test bed, a live test bed for, if there's any kind of, let's say, new features we want to introduce into Bitcoin. Hey, if you want Bitcoin mainnet wants to be conservative, no problem. Just go play on Fractal first, and then make that decision based on that, almost like scientific experiment.
Do you think like other legacy protocols or other like indexer-based protocols, as you mentioned, would they also be able to take advantage of opcat as well in their own way to make it more, like you said, maybe miner validated or other kind of features that are interesting as well?
I think a lot of the cat is going to also help so-called legacy token protocols. For example, ordinals. So we have devised something we call it the ordinals log, or some people call it the order log. So basically, you can, let's say you want to sell ordinal, right? You can do some kind of PSBT kind of style, but also with opcat, because opcat so-called enables so-called covenant. We're not going to go to details, but just simplify the listing. Basically, you don't have to trust any marketplace. You just send your ordinals, lock up your ordinals in some kind of cat enabled contract covenants. This covenant basically says, hey, if you pay me this many Bitcoins, you can take the orders. Or maybe you can think about some kind of like almost like an upgrade. You can have your existing runes or even BRC20, and you can migrate to CAT 20, and then so you can enjoy all the benefits of the smart contract enabled tokens on Bitcoin. I would say they're more or less they can coexist, and the CAT protocol and especially opcat is going to help even improve existing legacy token protocols.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. It's one of those things where, one thing about crypto in our industry is that it's always like competing standards, variety of innovations. Back in the day, I think when CoinMarketCap as a website first started, it was maybe like 6 coins, right, listed, and now we have like tens of thousands, right? And I think in some ways, maybe we'll see that as well on Bitcoin. Maybe we'll see that on FB as well with all these different standards. And like you said, right, there's a lot of other things you can do on top of that makes them worthwhile, right? And I think that's the great experiment that we kind of sign up for. Is there any other interesting technical directions or intellectual directions you are looking at, or you and your team are looking at these days?
If not all, most of our time these days spending on researching what kind of capability AuCAD can introduce. For example, right, articles. I think we have different ways to, bring so-called off-chain data back into the on-chain dApps or contracts. A lot of time we need to so-called semi-trusted party called oracles, for example, weather data or price information. Somehow if we can import those by having the oracles, attested to them by signing, right? So oracles or trustless bridge, as you mentioned before, or even have some kind of double spam prevention, so we can have almost an instant transaction. Yeah, the list just goes on. We have many different ways to take advantage of the AuCAD, and a lot of time, even though it's theoretically solved, but we don't know what's the cost, right? For example, how big the script is, or whether it's facing some kind of a limit of even for Fractal. So that's a lot of things we need to research and to optimize or to improve. So eventually we can put all this out as almost like best practice code. We almost like we want to be the open Zeppelin too for Bitcoin. We want to put out all this standard and battle tested code, so other people can just re-import them as a library. They don't have to worry about doing big number arithmetic or some kind of oracle or overflow. So we have some kind of all this very well researched library code that they can just plug and play. I think that's also what I hope we hope to get more, let's say, help from the Fractal grant program, because this is something really can benefit not only us but also for all the developer builders who's coming here to create new kind of things that's impossible on Bitcoin before.
Yeah, speaking of the Treasury Grant Program, sCrypt as a company is definitely the recipient of the Season 0 grant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate the work that your team has done, right? And I think as many people in the community might know, we have a retroactive kind of grant program where we really want to encourage builders to successfully create value for the ecosystem before they receive the grant, right? And I think we saw very early on with the work that you have done, and also the things that the sCrypt platform can enable, that it really adds a lot of value to the Fractal ecosystem already, which is really nice. And I hope to see continued sort of contribution by your team as well. Definitely very selfish reasons there for our community, right? Any pet peeves you have that you can share with us? Any like personal things that you feel like is part of your personality aside from work?
I'm kind of guy who's kind of crazy, who loved working. So I don't know. Some people maybe say, hey, I'm too, let's say, strict on, let's say, spelling. Some people criticize me for that. Maybe because I was when I was doing my PhD, when you submitting papers, you always have to make sure all the grammar, there's no syntactic error. I think we're very strict on that, because that's almost like if you want to publish some very high quality, paper on some, top journals or conference, if you have some, let's say a lot of or many, spelling errors, it's just usually taken as a very huge red flag, even though maybe the idea of the paper is very solid. It's just some huge red flag. So maybe because of that let's say vigorous academic training, so I just have an automatic feeling if I see some spell error, I cannot help but to just go ahead, whether it's in some kind of a blog or even I'm reviewing some my colleagues' code. I just want to make sure it's very solid. But a lot of time I think it probably doesn't matter if you have a type of error back here and there, but it's just sometimes I feel I cannot help. I cannot control. I think it's almost like instinct or impulse right now. We just maybe kind of weird. That's what's the weird part. Yeah,
I love it. I think I remember when I first read the sCrypt documentation, I was just like, oh wow, whoever wrote this is like like very clear with language and everything. Perhaps it's all like a reflection of that, right? I think now I'm a little bit scared. I think I should go back and review all the texts on the Fractal website, the Fractal documentation, to make sure we made a no spelling
if I
errors.
notice any typo, I'll
Please
let
let me
you
know.
Definitely.
Yeah, I look forward to those messages like, hey, Spencer, there's this like, you have one S missing in the title. It's like, all right.
Is it covenant or covenant? Yeah.
No, that is true. That's
yeah.
actually a really weird one, right? Covenant. You mentioned the word covenant earlier, and I think that's something that you of course is part of your work,
yeah,
right?
Almost like my vocabulary like these days. Yeah.
Is this your first time in Singapore? Because we are also at a Token 2049 week, and I think the conference was kind of crazy for the past week. What are some of the takeaways from being in Singapore this past week?
This is my first time here. Almost like a 24 hours journey, but I think it's pretty much worth it. I think right now, in retrospect, because to be very honest, I think I was a skeptic. I'm not sure I would come even, early last week, and then just quite a bunch of things happened, and you and some other people have, I think, a very high quality event. By the way, I've never been to the main event. I don't know where it is. I think I'm only in the side event. I think it's more technically and intellectually stimulating for me. And I think looking at this, Singapore is it kind of reminds me of the so-called the Bitcoin, let's say, community or economy. Even though it's kind of smallish, but because of the human ingenuity and also because of the, the hard work put on by the so-called the people of Singapore, and also the direction that's set out by the visionary leaders, Lee Kuan Yew and his family. I think it just reminds of us, even though you think sometimes you feel the community or let's say the land you are playing with, the territory is very limited. But because of the human creativity and ingenuity, it almost reminds me of the Bitcoin block, right? It's kind of smallish. It feels like Singapore is such a tiny place, but what can you do? But with creativity and build all this gigantic metropolis out of, I think it was a marshland, maybe after World War II. That's what I heard. Yeah. And transform it from a former like a marshland to some first world country. When I go back to my home city of San Francisco, it's supposed to be a first world country city, but it just very feels, I don't know, I just feel this feels more like a future oriented. You don't see many crazy people on the street. It's super clean and super safe. I don't think I ever worried about being, I don't know, like robbed or even never. I think it was my phone, I left it on when I went to the restroom, and when I came back, was still there. So
surprise.
And my car's window is still intact. So it's very unique experience. I think it's very positive.
I really like your analogy of like how Singapore being a small country is almost like a like the Bitcoin block, right? Yeah. Where there's like there can be so much diversity of content that can be in there, varying transactions and so on. Next time I see you, I'm not sure if you read the book From Third World to First World by Lee Kuan Yew.
I actually just bought it, seriously.
Oh, you did? I was going to say
like 1,000 pages.
If you don't have it, I'll buy one for you. But
I just bought it before my flight because, if I'm going to in Rome or Singapore, I got to understand where it's coming from. And it's just it's a unique place. I think it's almost like the East meets the West. Yeah,
I think next time we should definitely do a podcast about Singapore. I definitely have, many interesting opinions, and also like, a lot of strong emotions about like what makes Singapore awesome, and also like some of the trade-offs, right, that we have to sort of adjust for. But definitely a very, very fascinating topic itself. Cool. Today, this is the first episode of the Fractal podcast. I'm super honored as well to have you here yet again, and I think in some ways, it's first of many, and I hope to have you back at some point again to discuss about some of the other things that you guys are building, for the community and whatnot. But super happy to have you here in Singapore and also with this podcast. Thank you, Xiao Hui. Thank you, sCrypt.
Thanks for the great honor to be here to be the first guest. And I would love to return when we have more progress made. We can, looking back and see, almost check, hey, what has been accomplished, in the, I don't know, next, quarter or year or, 5 years or a decade. It'll be very, very great to be coming back.
Yeah, I agree. A long road ahead, and I think this is a great start of many things that we can do together. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, man.